Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the last webinar of 2021 for our community, where we are going to be discussing the 21 top lessons that we've learned for 2021. So in 2019, we took you through the 19 lessons that we had learned. In 2020, we took you through the 20 lessons that we had learned, and now we're going to take you through the 21 lessons that we have learned. As per always, we would love to have your engagement during this webinar. So we invite you to chat to us in the chat box, to post any questions in the Q&A box, but we want to do something a little bit different tonight. And that is that we have partnered with B1G1, Buy One, Give One, as part of our community outreach program. And what we're going to be doing is really asking you that when you post anything in the engagement, in the chat, or in the Q&A, that you actually put the letter E, the letter W, or the letter T behind your comment. And what that means is we will be giving to very specific causes throughout the webinar that you can choose for. So the letter E is for education. If you want to give education to an underprivileged primary school child. Letter T, we will be planting trees on your behalf. And the letter W, we will be giving clean water to people in need. So as we go through that and we navigate the very first time that we're doing this, I know that it might be bumpy to start off with. So we have decided that for everyone who has joined tonight anyway, before any engagements happened, we are also going to be giving through to that. So we will be unpacking this more as we move into our 2022 webinars. Joining me for our speaker tonight is Scott Picken, CEO and founder of Wealth Migrate and the Global Wealth Group. Thank you for joining us, Scott.
Awesome, Lee. Well, thanks very much. And it is an exciting thing that I know you're very passionate about, as am I, in terms of this whole B1G1 space and how we can make impacts, for people. So as an example, we're making a video at the moment for Cedars, and I just did the maths on my cell phone here. I think we calculated we're giving 2,040 days worth of education, as you just said, to children. And that equates to 5.5 years. So 5.5 years of education to a child, or many different children. But the point is, no matter which way you want to look at it, that's what it equates to. So, I'm reading a book, which I'm going to finish off with tonight, about cult status and how the world is evolving from purpose to actually impact and walking away with tangible impact. So again, just to repeat, what Lee's saying is that just by being here on this webinar tonight, you are going to have impacts in people's lives. And hopefully we can have an impact in your life. That's the intention. And then by engaging, we're going to have more fun, and we can have more impacts in terms of that process. So thank you, Lee, for setting that up. I really appreciate it. In terms of this webinar, sorry, after you.
Sorry, absolutely, Scott. So I'd like to invite our attendees who are online to start off the process. I have told you E for education, T for planting trees, and W for water. Please won't you let us know where you are joining us from today for this webinar, and just say hi. We'd love to know where you are. Scott sits in South Africa, I sit in Costa Rica. So we would love to get your input in that.
Let's see where a few people are from. I also fully acknowledge that there are a huge amount of people that registered, and yet it's an extremely busy time of the year. And so a lot of people will be watching this as a recording. And the one thing I will say is that if you're not here live, you don't get the brownie points of the impact around the world. We maybe could figure that out one day in the future, but certainly not at the moment. We're not that advanced. So we've got Centurion, Namibia, Austin. So welcome to all of you. And remember, when you put in a post, any post, if you put in E for education, T for planting trees, or W for providing clean water, each and every time you make a post, as long as you put one of those letters in, it'll count towards an impact. And I'm going to show you just now what these impacts are about. So let's rock and roll. As Lee said, it is the last webinar. To be very clear, and I want to set a precedent or a framework up front, tonight is an unstructured webinar. And the reason being is that for me, it's an accumulation of the lessons and things that I've learned over the last year. And obviously, there's lots of websites, there's books, and there's things, even different PowerPoints that I'm going to jump around. So it's not just one PowerPoint with 21 slides and run through it, because I personally think it's more interactive to go and see all the stuff. So that's the first precedent. The second is, Lee, I'm quite happy if people want to ask questions through the process, because there's 21 lessons, or 21 things that I've learned. But if someone has a question about it, let's rather deal with it. It's a bit different from a usual webinar where we prefer to get through it and then do questions at the end. I don't mind if people do, but if you can just help me with letting the questions know in case I miss them. So let's rock and roll and get into it. The whole idea tonight is to be engaged and to try and add as much value. I do want to remind you, we ran a series 2 years ago called Wealth 5.0 2020. We ran a series this year, Wealth 5.0 2021. We did have 6 webinars where we looked at the top trends for 2021. We looked at NFTs. We looked at the 16 macro trends that are intersecting. We looked at why Edtech and Fintech markets are 2 major markets. We looked at Kathy Wood, who's one of the most successful venture capitalists, female venture capitalists in America, and what we can learn from her. And then we also looked at impact investing. So the idea of tonight is not to go into those in any depth. And if you want the depth, reach out to us. We can share them. They are available online, and they also are within the Wealth University so that you can get access to it. Another webinar we did where we had over 2,500 people, I think it was 2,300 people live, was with Clem Sunter. And it was an incredible webinar. So again, I'm not going to, the 21 lessons that I brought up tonight, I could literally just talk about what we learned with Clem Sunter and all the other 6 webinars. But that's not the point, because the supporting stuff is behind there. So like, I can tell you one of the 21 lessons this year is going to be NFTs, but I'm going to brush over it and I'm not going to spend an hour talking about it, because if you want to know more about NFTs, go watch that webinar where we went into a lot of detail. We also, I will share with you at the end, but we're about to embark on another Seeders launch. Seeders is the largest equity crowdfunding platform in England. They've just been bought for $100 million by Republic. And what they allow people to do is that traditionally people only got to invest in companies once they were Facebook or Amazon. Very few people were invited to the party in private equity. Most people don't want to get involved in a ranked startup, but the real opportunities in growth companies, and they provide the opportunity for people to get involved in companies that they like and that they believe have potential. And we're doing a Seeders launch in January. So I'm just giving you a heads up as to the fact that it's coming. And really for tonight, what Lee started with, and it's where I wanted to start, was with B1G1. Paul Dunn started it in 2007 with a simple idea. What if every business could make a difference in their own way, just by doing what they normally do? With more than a decade of work, the simple idea has now become a global movement, which has invested over $250 million and impacted more than 254 million people. So that's 254 million people where they've changed lives around the world. And I would highly recommend that you go, and like I told you, I'm going to be bouncing around, but you literally go to this website, B1G1. And what's amazing is you can go in, you can watch their story, and you can go and you can look at all the impacts. So whether it's days of access to education, 14,327,000 trees planted, 7 million meals have been given, 2.2 million days of access to healthcare, and you kind of get the point. You can go around all the different things. And I seem to remember, Lee, from the webinar, there's about 600 different initiatives where people can participate in. So, if you want to find something that you want to resonate with. And again, tonight, the intention is not to, hang on, I've got to figure out how to do this now. Give me 2 seconds, Lee. Why is this now?
We get through the whole Wealth 5.0 webinar series without a glitch. And on the last webinar, we have the glitch.
No, the problem is I landed half an hour ago and my notes are on Word, and I can't, it's either showing me Word or PowerPoint, but not either or. And I need my notes to read. Okay, let me just figure this out quickly. I'm going to do this and I'm going to put it in notes. This is what you call fixing a problem on the fly. No, man, what's it doing? Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. It's changed the computer setting then. Okay, we're sorted. Sorry about that. My computer decided to change something while I was away. Right, so let's go back to the B1G1. So the first lesson for me is the whole B1G1. And as I said to you, I highly recommend actually going and watching the webinar with, oh, come on, man. What is it doing? Sorry, guys, just give me 2 seconds. There's some setting that's changed on my machine and I don't know what it is. Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. So it keeps mirroring my screen, which it shouldn't be doing. And I don't know why it's doing it. It's not done this before.
Maybe I'll just take over here, Scott, and something that I was going to chat to the attendees about at the end of the webinar and get their input so long, or at least getting the thinking going. So as you know, we really want to present world-class webinars as we go into 2022. Our aim is to present one at least every month, but we'd love input from our community, the topics that you'd want us to cover. This year, we covered everything from impact investing to NFTs to the 16 macro and micro trends and a whole lot of things in between. And we'd really like to hear from you guys what you would like us to cover or investigate in 2022. So please start dropping those into the chat box or into the Q&A as you think about it throughout this webinar, and just let us know.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's all about trying to add as much value as possible, basically, in terms of where we are and what we're trying to do. So I'm nearly done here. If people have ideas, and again, it doesn't just mean that we need to get those ideas through tonight. Lee's always available in terms of what is possible, and or I'm available as well. Share the ideas. We'd really appreciate it. Okay, we finally sorted. That only took a while. Okay, so let me share my screen again. So the first lesson for me is all around B1G1. I've already shared with you the impacts and how actually it's about having tangible impacts. So for me, it's really, really important that if you look at it, it's not just about donating money, but it's actually about how many impacts are you having in someone's life. So rather than saying I spent £10 or $10 or 10 Rand or whatever currency you want, it's far better to be able to say, well, I impacted 60 people's lives tonight or today. And that really becomes quite meaningful. And it's really interesting because it comes down to storytelling. And the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation that comes. And Paul Dunn eloquently put this shared this with me, and I didn't even know that Steve Jobs said this. But it does remind me of Nelson Mandela. And I've watched quite a lot of stuff on Simon Sinek that talks about leadership and the impact of a story, and how great people that can tell great stories is ultimately how you can start a movement. It's how you can get people to with emotion, want to do things. So it's not about selling, it's about getting them to actually want to do something. And I think it's a great way to start off, Lee, in the first lesson, because impacts are built inherently in us. We get more joy out of giving than we do about getting. And so for me, the first lesson was that going back to B1G1, and we did try and partner with them back in 2017, 2018. And by going back to them now, we've found a tangible way to truly provide impact each and every time we do something, whether it's people turning up to a webinar, and with time, I'm hoping it's going to get to the point where even when you invest, you can invest in a sustainable way. And then it's about the story. what is the story? Who are the people that are being impacted? And actually being able to understand that I'm not just giving money to charity, I'm planting X number of trees, or I'm educating an underprivileged child. And so for me, the lesson here for all of you is, what impact can you have in your life? And if you run your own business or you're part of a corporate, what impacts could you bring in? And how could you do it? And I'm going to end with on the 21st lesson, and we're going to go full circle as to how important this is. But ultimately, it comes down to the story. It comes down to the story you're telling yourself, and it comes down to the story you're telling others. The next lesson for me is about patience. And it's really interesting because I learned this one the hard way. Now, there are no slides or anything to show here, but this year has been a very tough year for a lot of people, I think, and including myself. And what I find really interesting is that as an entrepreneur, I like to get stuff done. I like to control things. I like to be in control. It's certainly my go-to place. And yet there was so much stuff that was out of my control. My girlfriend moved to England. We had COVID. We were on red lists. We had to sit in lockdowns, and we couldn't access certain countries on the red list. And really, I went on a couple of courses. And one of the key things that came through to me was patience and really trusting your intuition. So I've always been a kind of a go-getter, just get stuff done. And for me, it was a really different year where it was kind of taking a step back and having patience and just trusting your intuition that if it was meant to be, it was meant to be. So, a great friend of mine said to me, Scott, you need to be outcome independent. Now, again, Lee, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this, but it's really interesting because as a goal setter, for me, it's all about getting stuff done. And how can I do this? And how else can I get results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, you should do stuff anyway. You should be outcome independent. And it all ties in with patience for me, because I'm not patient. I used to always joke that patience is a virtue I was not born with. And this year for me forced me to be patient, because there were a bunch of things that were out of my control. And no matter what I did about them, I couldn't change that. And for me, I found that one of the hardest lessons. But what was interesting as a lesson is that by kind of trusting my intuition, by trying to be outcome independent, doing my best, which has always been my philosophy, just do your best. And if you pass or fail, it doesn't matter, you've done your best. But ultimately just being patient with stuff that was out of your control. And I suppose it reminds me of the poem that my father taught me so many years ago, which was, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I can't remember the second part. Power to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference, something along those lines. And it ultimately all comes back to one thing, which is this patience that I kept telling myself this year. And I'm not saying it's necessarily been a nice lesson, but it's certainly been one of my top lessons of this year. And I suppose one of the key learnings for me was that as I did this more, I started to trust my intuition more and more, which was equally valuable. That was a heart lesson. My third one was the super trends. And as you probably know, I spend a lot of time trying to research what's happening around the world. I like to follow numerous different people, from Ray Dalio to Kathy Wood to Roger Hamilton. And I'm always trying, Peter Diamantes are just a few of them, to try and gather what is happening around the world. And what I think emerged this year more than ever is the 5 super trends of Edtech, which is education technology, Fintech, which is financial technology, Medtech, which is medical technology, Green Tech, which is hopefully understandable in green technology, and the 5th one is Space Tech, which is space technology. And I think what became more and more apparent to me was that if you look at all the research that's out there, and if you look at all the trends that are happening, all the macro trends, they ultimately fall into one of those 5 super trends. And again, I've spoken on so many webinars about this, but how to predict the future is to look at trends that are intersecting. And so if you're looking at your investment space, you have to be considering how all 5 of those trends are going to impact your investments. If you're trying to educate your kids, you have to think about it. If you're thinking about your career and what you want to be doing in 20 years, you have to be thinking about it. Because these 5 super trends are dramatically impacting the way we exist on this planet. So it's not only an investment property, it's who we are and what we do. And so to repeat again, Edtech, Fintech, Medtech, Green Tech, and Space Tech are the 5 super trends. And again, we've got webinars about it where you can go and research it more. But for me, the big lesson was this year was those 5 super trends really coming to the fore. And over the next decade, they are going to impact you whether you like it or not. So you can either ignore them, but they're going to impact you, or you can take note of them. The fourth one for me is the NFT space. And I'm going to share with you some slides here, if I share my screen. And this one was interesting for me. So we're going to bounce around here because I need to be able to find the slide where it relates. And there's a whole bunch of slides that I've got open here. So these are the slides. And again, I'm not going to talk about it in a huge amount of detail because we did an entire webinar on this. But there's this money for nothing NFTs sparked a new gold rush, and the amount of money that's come into NFTs this year is really astounding. And this guy Beeple sold this picture for $58 million US. $58 million US. I was blown away like this week. And Lee, I know you own one of these crypto monkeys, but like one of these crypto monkeys sold for $10 million. And I'm like, it blows me away. Like it's like a picture. I probably can find it where I'll try and find it quickly on my, maybe you've got it, Lee, if you could open it, but let me just see if I can find it quickly. But it literally blew me away because this crypto, it's not even a bloody good picture of a crypto monkey, like in my opinion. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Sorry, I didn't have it. This is how tonight's going to be. It's going to be me bouncing around, and if I think of something, I'm going to try and find it to share with you. No, I can't see it coming up here. Oh well.
Scott, I've got it. I'm going to share it. The one that's sold for 300.
Yeah, can you share it quickly?
Yeah.
And
there we go. I think everyone can see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. And what blows me away is that's $300,000. I mean, that's the price of a house. You know, in terms of it. And actually, there was one recently that if I can find, Lee, was $10 million. And this, like, look at this thing here. Let me just, I'll bring both of these ones up here. But what blows me away when one looks at this is the amount of money that's coming into the space. And I'll be honest with you, I don't understand it. Like, so we've done a whole webinar on this, and I need to go and learn kind of what is happening here because I don't fully get it. But and Lee's better than me, Lee and her husband, because they've been buying these crypto monkeys. But I've clearly got a lot to learn still. But anyway, this one here sold for 1.2 million. And I have to say, like, when I look at it, like, I think I could do this art. Like, I'm a useless artist. And when I was doing logo, like, I think I could do this art. So, it's really interesting. But I suppose what I do find fascinating is that there's this book called The NFT Revolution, Real Estate Edition. And I've actually just bought this, so it's on its way to me. And there you can see the book coming up. So it's this book here, because I'm really interested in where this is going from a real estate perspective. And I haven't read this, so it's not a recommendation, but it was recommended to me by Hilda Lunderstedt. And I'm going to be reading this. It arrives in early January. So anyway, my fourth lesson for me was NFTs. It's been one of the biggest trends this year. The fifth one is the Metaverse. And there's this video here.
Here's the 3 most shocking.
Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's by Roger Hamilton, and the Metaverse will be bigger than you think. It's a 10-minute video about the Metaverse, and it's really, really fascinating. And, interestingly enough, I can't remember if you can remember, Lee, how far back we started talking about meta marketplaces, but it was certainly 2 years ago or more. And Lyndon Booth deserves the credit because he said, no, we're not just a marketplace, we're a meta marketplace. And I was like, what the hell is a meta marketplace? And he said, no, Meta is above or beyond. That's what meta means. And nowadays everyone's talking about, you know, the metaverse, and Facebook's even changed their name to Meta because of where the world's going in terms of the whole metaverse. And I find it fascinating that 2 years ago, we were already going in the right direction, not just because of a trend in 2021. You know, it's not like we're trying to add a nice name. And what I do think is interesting is that, funny enough, I was with Lyndon last night, and he was recommending, and I haven't watched this, but he was recommending watching the movie Ready Player One. And again, I haven't watched it if anyone else wants to give comments on it, but he said that the movie came out in 2017, 2018, and it's the best way to describe what is going to happen in the metaverse. And what I find really fascinating in this whole metaverse, and there's another article here that I literally got just today. So give me 2 seconds. I've got to find you the article. Where's it gone now? No, that's not it. Oh, why is it not coming up? The PDF should be here. I opened all my PDFs to be ready. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't find it now. Let's try this thing quickly because I downloaded it today. Here it is. So this is an article that I recommend. Now, by the way, these articles I will be sharing to our inner circle, which is our group, which we're actually evolving into Wealth Hackers. And I'll be sharing these articles. But this is a very respected person, and he was talking about the trends. And what was fascinating here was he was talking about the new land grab in the new world. Millions of dollars has been plonked down by investors buying digital real estate in several virtual worlds like Sandbox, Decentraland, crypto, voxels, and basically people are buying up huge pieces of land. It does talk about it's still early days in the space and what's happening. And we're going to talk about Evergrande just now. What I find fascinating in this whole metaverse is Bill Gates had an article a couple of days ago that said within 3 years, every single meeting, so this Zoom meeting now, we will all be in a metaverse where I'll be presenting, Lee will be there, but it'll feel like we're all in the room together. And that to me really excites me because the Zoom thing works, but there's nothing better than being in a live room and that engagement and everything else. So it's really interesting. And I think this is a massive trend that one needs to know about in terms of this process. The sixth lesson for me is a little bit of a negative lesson. And it's, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Now, for a couple of years, I have ridden my mountain bike with a bunch of friends. And it's interesting because they're always investing in these new ideas. And one of them was this crypto trading bot where they were getting these phenomenal returns, sometimes 5 or 10% a week, or maybe even a month. But they were doubling their money every couple of months, and it was just a phenomenal story. And I was like, well, how are they doing it? And they go, no, it's artificial intelligence, and it's this fantastic bot, and it's big data, and it's trading crypto. Well, so that was the one opportunity. The other opportunity was a day trading. So nothing fancy with computers, just day trading, just buying and selling shares on a day, like on a day basis. And this one guy, day trader, was like a really good day trader. And so one guy spoke to his friend who spoke to his friend, and more people started putting money in. And again, they're getting these phenomenal returns, 10, 20, 30%. They're doubling their money, every 6 months. And it's interesting because, I'd be riding my mountain bike and I'd be like, yeah, I just invest in property. I know it's really boring. I get like 8% a year, cash on cash return. And I get kind of 13 to 15% if I include capital growth. And people are like, oh, but that's boring. I mean, we're getting that a month. Well, one of my big lessons this year is that the crypto thing is MTI. And they lost about $560 million from people. It effectively became a world-class Ponzi scheme. And the day trading thing, the day trader has effectively disappeared. And I suppose for me, I don't say it because people have lost their hard-earned money. So I'm not like it's a real problem, okay? But something I learned from my uncle many years ago is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Now, don't get me wrong. there's a counter argument to that. And I learned this from Hun Australia, where Hun Australia would stand on a stage with 100, let's say dollars, $100. And he'd say, I'll give this $100 to anyone that gives me $20. And everyone would sit there on their bums doing nothing. And he would say again, like, okay, well, I will give this $100 to anyone that gives me $20. And eventually someone would get up and like, didn't want to make a fool of themselves, didn't want to be laughed at by the crowd. But at some point, someone would get up and go like, well, here's 20. And you give him the $100. And everyone go, what the hell just happened? And he goes, well, sometimes it is too good to be true. And sometimes there's a great opportunity and you need to take the opportunity. And the lesson in property or real estate is that it's true. If you're going out and trying to find property, you can find a property from a divorced person or a widow, you know, whatever, someone that just desperately wants to get rid of a property. There is an opportunity, whether it's in property or in the stock market, to find returns that are way above average. It's possible. But in my opinion, 20 years worth of experience, it's not possible to do it at scale. So what I mean by that is that if you want to go find one house and just like have this incredible return, that's great. You can do that, but try to do that on 1,000 houses. It's impossible. And so you've got to look at it from a common sense perspective, where if you take MTI, you would take this day trading, is that, again, a lesson I learned from my uncle is that there was this African private equity fund. So it was a fund out in New York, and they used to invest into Africa, and they used to like buy breweries. They made this phenomenal return buying Zambian breweries and other companies like it. But the problem is, as they got more money, it gets harder and harder as you got more capital to get significant returns, because you've got more capital to deploy and there's less unique opportunities. That's just the way the world works. So again, as more money comes in and as it scales, the returns become more normalized. And I always say that if you're getting 5 or 10% a week or a month, then why isn't all the institutional capital in the world going into your investment opportunity? So just think that one through, because I've given you both sides of the fence. I've given you that sometimes it can be better than people expect. And again, your $100, you know, for $20. But in my humble 20 years plus worth of experience investing, those are unique once-off opportunities. If it's at scale and it's part of an investment club and your mates are doing it and blah, 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 then you should expect normalized returns. And if you're not, then I think the adage "too good to be true" stands up. And I'm sad to say that I was right, but I didn't invest any money. And I suppose one can only say you're only as good as where you put your money in terms of that opportunity. So got to be careful of time here. We're only on number 6. Number 7, Evergrande in China. So again, I share this here, that PDF that I had open. Evergrande defaults finally. The embattled Chinese property developer struggling to meet its interest obligation seems to be heading deeper in a hole and increasingly finds it difficult to service its obligation. Its liabilities exceed 300 billion. As I understand, it's the second biggest developer in China. The technical default scenario is unfolding despite the Chinese government publicly encouraging the founders of property companies to dip into their personal fortunes to meet their company's obligations. State coercion normally follows when polite requests fail. Anyway, so the government in China is working on this. But I think if I've learned one thing about the last crash, was that where there's smoke, there's fire. And I remember standing on stage back in 2007, even 2008, and saying, hey, London's a great place to invest. You should invest. And there were kind of the smell of smoke that the mortgage market in America wasn't, you know, working so well, etc. But you look at the long-term fundamentals in London, and the demand was way outstripping supply. And what happened is it crashed and it lost about 20% in 12 months. Now, the good thing in investing is that if the fundamentals are right of supply and demand, they correct quickly. And in London, it corrected quickly within 12 months. And we actually made really good money buying properties off developers at a discount that recovered within 12 months. My point of my story is I learned the hard way back in 2008, 2009, that where there's smoke, there's fire. and not to put off when Ray Dalio and others are talking about, you know, these type of things. So what I'm understanding from my research is that the supply and the demand is out of kilter massively. And some of the reports I've seen in China are upwards of 60 million homes are sitting empty, which is again what happened in America, where and actually funny enough, places like Ireland, where out of 4 homes that were being built in Ireland, only 1 was being occupied. Now, again, for me, is that, is China a smoking gun? And what impact will China have on the entire global economy? I would highly recommend going and looking at what Kathy Wood's talking about, looking at what Ray Dalio is talking about. But also as the Chinese economy normalizes from high growth, kind of 8% plus, to more democratization and trying to encourage everyone and kind of looking at growth rates now in the region of 5 to 6%, what impact's that going to have on the global economy? So the lesson for me is that I think there's more to this Evergrande thing than meets the eye right now. And if I take COVID, I remember phoning my Chinese partners in the beginning of COVID. I'm talking 2019. I'm talking November, December 2019, and asking them about COVID because people started talking about what was happening in China. They're like, don't worry, it's all good. The government's got it under control. And I was like, okay, cool. The government's got it under control. Well, we kind of know how 2020 and 2021 ended up. So I wouldn't be as confident when the government says that Evergrande is sorted. And what does it mean as an investor, big picture, not only in China, but in the global economy? The 8th one is that, funny enough, if you look at China and you pivot to India, is that there has been a massive flow of capital into India. And again, I'm just going to have to look through it here, but let's just look here quickly. So I've got all these articles to share with you. But I'm looking, this is it here. And what's happening in India is that 4 out of the last 10 unicorns in India, 4 out of the last 10 unicorns in the world came out of India. A massive amount of the growth capital has moved from China to India, also because of the China trade war with America. And what's happening is that a lot of this is going into tech. So you can see here, NRIs are effectively non-resident Indians, but 30% of them would be keen to invest in fractional ownership property. Fractional ownership, the smart way to invest. Magic bricks, I'm hoping to have some exciting news, but I'm not going to say anything publicly. Fractional ownership in terms of what's happening. We're going to come back to inequality. We're going to come back to REITs. Sorry, there's another article here somewhere that I wanted to share with you, just around the growth of India. Where is it gone now? Anyway, I think it's safe to say that India is one of the biggest opportunities out there at the moment. And there we are. So this was actually the article here, all around the Indian startups. And there was another great article that came out that I read literally yesterday on how the average time to get to $1 billion company in India has gone from 7 years to 5 years, how there's been this massive increase in money that's coming in, how the regulation space is working. There's 300 million people that are in the middle class already, active on their mobile phones, and the ecosystem, as you know, is over 1 billion people. Those 300 million all speak English, so it's a really interesting market. And we've actively gone into India this year. We launched our partnership in India about a month ago, and India, certainly for me, the lesson is that India, we went into China in 2016. We've had a good ride out of China, and interesting, the headwinds are against China at the moment. Now, our team in China, are continuing and obviously have massive potential as China grows. But India has now got the new tailwinds. Like it really is the place that people need to be looking at. The 9th lesson for me is the rise of the retail investor. And I think this article, I've got to find it quickly. Here it is. No, that's the NFT article. Where is the other article? Oh, come on, man. So this is one of the articles here, where, as we know, we started this year back in late January, where on Reddit, the people basically took on the establishment and with GameStop and Robinhood. And it talks about 5 massive trends here in terms of this overall article. And again, I would highly recommend reading these articles. But if you go look here at this major, you've basically got a changing guard in terms of from the to the millennials. You've got populism. You've got, basically the whole thing with Trump and the void that was filled. You've got government investigating because it moved. But what you got to understand is that this is much bigger than just this one story. And this is the rise of retail investors around the world. And as you know, I've already shown you some of the slides on India and how fractionalization is so massive. And I can't find the article, so I'm just gonna search for it quickly. Kathy Wood, don't underestimate the little guy. There we are. So this was, she's one of the most respected VCs in America now and globally. And she was talking earlier this year about, the importance of the little guy. And in the past, the little guy was nobody. But with fractionalization and the use of tech now, is that this is a massive movement. And Reddit was just the start. If you look at Peter Diamandis, he talks about the 6 Ds of disruption. And the first one is digitalization. The second one is deception. We're very much in the deception phase. Like people have no idea how big this is going to become. They've focused all their energy on the top 1%, and where the opportunity lies is in the 99%. The 10th lesson for me is an interesting one because it's not so much business related, but I've been absolutely fascinated by how polarized the world has become. And what I mean by that is that, whether it was Donald Trump and whether you were for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump, whether it was Brexit and you were for Brexit or against Brexit. But more recently, it's whether you're a vaccinator or unvaccinated, anti-vaxxer. And it has absolutely blown me away, like how polarized people are. And this really worries me. I mean, this is not a positive lesson. This is a really negative lesson of why people are so polarized around not just vaccines, because it's everything. Is it social media? Is it because we have to have a stance and then we have to back up our stance? Someone I know who's a doctor had a client that was having 2 clients, by the way, that were having life-threatening surgery and they wouldn't accept blood in case the person giving the blood was vaccinated. I know another couple that has gone through massive life challenges, couldn't have children, had to move country, survived all of that, 20 years of great marriage, but now getting divorced because of the ones for vaccine, the ones against it. It just blows me away. And I have to say, this is probably a lesson that I've learned and witnessed, but I don't understand why there's such this polarization and does social media feed it, etc. And why can't people be more open-minded where if Lee says she's for or against the vaccine, so be it. It's her choice. And if I'm for or against it, so be it. It's my choice. But why do we have to vilify each other if the other one does the opposite of what we agree with? And I don't know, Lee, if you've got any opinions on this, but it's a lesson for me. It's a negative lesson of 2021, but I don't know what the answer is.
No, absolutely. And I think we've navigated this in our own environment within our teams and within my family, that polarizing people, somehow when someone finds out that little fact, it changes who you are in their mind. They don't realize that you're still the same person who probably had that thought when they were speaking to you last week and they were happy to speak to you. I don't understand it, and it is something that we have to navigate. It has been brought to the fore, especially with countries who are now doing booster shots, who are saying that children have to be vaccinated, and there are very definite opinions. I don't think it's going to get any better in 2022. And as we sit here, we wait to see what the next polarizing factor is going to be, because in 2022, people will move on from vaccinators and anti-vaxxers to the next thing, the way they can exclude people.
Yeah. So I think I don't know, when I try and do this, they're not all positive lessons. This has been my lesson this year. What I do with it, I don't know. What you do with it, I don't know either. but it certainly blows me away that people aren't open-minded. And maybe the request is for people to be open-minded. Again, just because someone else wants to do something you don't agree with, maybe try and understand their side of the fence as well. Right, the next one was quite an interesting one, actually, because if I share my slide with you, I did an entire thing on cash flow quadrant. In fact, I did an entire course on this and the 6 steps, which we did as with the launch of the Wealth University. And I suppose one of my biggest learning lessons this year was that one of the things that I would consider my superpower is getting stuff done. But one of my learning lessons was that if I wanted to move from this quadrant, the self-employed quadrant, where you're always busy and you're only as good as how hard you can work, to this quadrant, then I had to manifest people's time, money, energy. Now, I don't like this in terms of to make money for you, but the point being is that it's in this section, it's all about you doing the work. It's like, how good are you at getting the job done? And in this section, it's about how can you manifest and mobilize others to get things done. And it reminds me a lot of a saying that I learned from Dr. Dolph DeRuss. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so what's really interesting is that if you look at it, most people on the planet sit in either the employee section, 95% of the world's population, by the way, sit in either the employee section or the self-employed section. And this is all about self. And the right-hand side is all about team. Whether you're building a business or part of a business and you're a shareholder, then you're part of a team. And if you're an investor, I guarantee you, if you're a successful investor, you're investing in a team. And so my lesson was, for me, and I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, so I'm very clearly a very slow learner, is that I've always been trying to figure out how to get the job done and how to do it and to push people. And I'm sure Lee would agree that sometimes it's a lot more force than power. But my big learning lesson this year was that through this, you use force, whether you're an employee or even self-employed, because it's how hard can you work? How much can you get, output out of yourself? Whereas in this side, it's about power. It's about powership. It's about power. It's about partnership. It's about, mobilizing others because they want to. And I love this word, manifesting, people's time, money, energy. And again, not to make money just for you, because I don't believe in that. But if you take from a collaborative approach, manifesting people's time, money, and energy to build a movement, to solve one of the greatest challenges on the planet, to build $1 billion company together. That's the way I see it. And so again, Lee, I'd love your comments on this, because you and I have worked very closely together this year, and we've spoken a lot about this, because this has been one of my hardest lessons, to really finally get it, that to truly build something substantial, something significant, you do it by helping others achieve what they want to achieve in their lives versus trying to get it all done yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only across teams, across your families, across anything that you want to do, even sports teams, if you use one of your favorite analogies, that you cannot do it by yourself because you will just fail. You don't have enough hours in your day. And it just ends up frustrating people that you want to be a lone island. People are not meant to be lone islands, regardless of what they're doing, even in a work situation. So it has been a hard lesson for various members, not only Scott, members of our team, to learn this year, that being collaborative and actually helping the different teams and different members to reach their potential, we reach our global potential.
Yeah. And hopefully it's a great lesson others can copy. When I went to India in 2018, my father taught me to do my best. And in India, I learned to be my best. And I think there's a lot of similarities here in what I'm trying to say. It's not always about doing, but it's about creating the environment. Maybe it reminds me also of what I learned from Richard Branson. And I'm pleased this not being arrogant, but I literally learned this personally. I was with him. These words came from his mouth when I was with him on his island. And he said, the way he builds businesses is he finds the right person, he sets them up for success, and he gets out of their way. And I think this is what the metaphor that I understood the English behind it, but I didn't understand how to do it. So it's certainly been a big learning lesson for me this year. The next one, and I'm conscious of time, so we could probably talk about each of these for half an hour, that I learned from our chairman, Willem van der Post, which I love, is that in any team, you've got A players, you've got B players, and you've got C players. Now, A players like to play with A players, and it's all about growing. It's about like-minded people, and it's about uplifting. And quite frankly, an A player actually likes being in a team where others are better than them because they can grow and they can learn. I remember reading something about superstars that like really top athletes or superstars like to be criticized. They like to be told how they can get better. Whereas most people are looking for a pat on the back and, oh, you did well, and you know, that type of thing. Whereas truly great people, A players, you know, even A+ players, just want to consistently be getting better. B players, they sort of average, and they don't like A players because they get insecure. So they do their job and they play politics and whatever just to kind of keep their job. But then B players, because they don't feel so secure, they also hire C players. Okay, so as Willem says, before you know it, you've got a team of bloody inept idiots like running around and all telling each other how wonderful they are, but they're basically a bunch of B's and C players. Something I learned years ago, funny enough, not knowing this metaphor, but having experienced this, is that if you hire a whole bunch of C players, then you have to have a whole bunch of middle management to make sure that C players know what they're doing and are, you know, turning up to work on time and not going surfing or sitting in the pub or whatever the C players do. But if you hire a bunch of A players, like, you don't need to regulate them. You don't need to tell them what to do. Like, they figure out. In fact, actually, with an A player, the only thing you need to do is give them guardrails. And often, like, you've got to, like, the metaphor I've been given a few times, and I'm not trying to be arrogant here, but it's like a kite, and you kind of just got to hold on to the string a little bit because the A player just wants to soar. Then the next lesson I learned this year was that you also got to be careful of being a B+ player. And Willem came to me, and again, there's probably a lesson and a lesson here, which is get yourself a chairman, deal with people that are really quality people and are giving you feedback. And he said, Scott, you're being a B+ player because you're running from one problem to the next, and you're putting out this fire. And then by the time you put out this fire, you go to this fire and you put this one out. By the time you put this fire out, that one's flared up again. And he said, you're being a B+ player, because what a B+ player does is they think they're hell of effective. They think they're hell of a good at getting stuff done, but they're basically running around solving problems. But what they're not doing is actually solving the problem forever. And what he taught me was that an A player or even an A+ player will go in with a 3-step process. They will firstly get involved themselves, and they will solve the problem, and then they will process it. They might mind map it, they might draw like a process diagram, but they do it themselves. Then they delegate to someone that might not have as much experience, and finally they automate it. But by doing that, you build a completely scalable solution that never repeats itself as a problem. And it was a massive lesson for me because, you know, Lee, I'm sure will attest to this. I've run around this year, like literally from one bloody fire to the next, trying to solve problems. And it was really interesting getting this feedback from my chairman going, dude, you're a B+. And if you stay a B+, you are going to be frustrated for the rest of your life, and you're not going to build a company of significance. So it's been a real mindset for me internally. And we spoke about it just yesterday with our leadership team, that we also call each other. If we say that this client wants to be helped, and I feel very passionate about it, and it's like, we need to help this client, and we need to ask ourselves, was it our fault to start off with? Was it a client's mistake? You know, can we help this client, or is this going to take too much time and energy to create a solution that is not scalable, and therefore it's not good for the company, and therefore it's not good for all investors? And it's really interesting for us internally to even start using that lingo. So take it, don't take it, but if you want to build something scalable, you've got to have A+, you've got to have A players, and you've got to think A+ scaling. The next one I learned from Roger Hamilton, and it was all around Andrew Carnegie, and it's the 5 C's. Now, by the way, Roger Hamilton taught the 3 C's, but the beauty of our community was that our community took that to the next level, which I love. And so the 3 C's that Roger taught was that in school, we're taught to have clarity first. Okay, and then once we kind of get clarity, we'll make, you know, we'll have the certainty to do something, and then we'll make a commitment. So let's just say we want to start a company, and we're working away as in our day job, and we're like, want clarity. We're like, shit, I really want to start a company, but I tell you what, I'm not going to start a company until I got clarity. Okay, and then once I got clarity, I'll have certainty, and I'll resign, and then I'll make the commitment, and I'll go and start this company. And I've seen so many of my corporate mates like dabble on the side, like, oh, I'll start this company over here, and I'll work on weekends, or I'll work one day a week, but they never give up on their corporate job. And that's because we taught that in school. You know, get the clarity first, and then once you got the clarity, you'll get the certainty, and once you got the certainty, you'll get the commitment. But the point is, it's 100% way to fail, because the only way to succeed is to go the other way around and to get the commitment, like make the commitment, like I'm going to do this. And a great example that I spoke about in one of the Wealth Insights was Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie basically was a Scotsman. He went back to Europe, and he found out that they were making steel. Okay, now before that they were just using iron, but he went back and found out they were using steel. But in America, they didn't have any steel, and he couldn't work out why, and it's because they had no steel factories. So all the railroads and everything, they didn't have any steel. So he was like, why don't we have any steel factories? And it was because they had no funding. So he made a commitment. He said, right, I'm going to build a steel mill. So then he went to all the railroads and he said, right, I'm going to build a steel mill. And if I build a steel mill, will you be my first customer? And they were like, well, we don't know. Like, how do we know if you're going to build a steel mill? And he was like, trust me, I'm going to build a steel mill. Okay. And by the way, if you don't sign with me, I'm going directly down the road to your competitor. And when the steel comes out, your competitor is going to get the steel before you do. So they all signed up, effectively forward purchase. And then on the back of that, he went to the banks and he said, oh, look, banks, you weren't prepared to fund a steel mill because there was no demand. Well, here's all the demand. I'm going to literally build all the steel for the railroads. And so the banks funded it. And he became the richest man in the world. And by the way, he funded the book Think and Grow Rich, which to this day, and I don't want to get into religion, so non-religious book, has had the most impact on people in creating wealth, Andrew Carnegie. So you've got to do it the other way around. You've got to make a commitment, then you'll get the certainty, and then you'll get the clarity. And another way that Roger says this, which I love, is get clear on the what and the when. What are you going to do and by when? And then figure out the how, the who and the how. Okay, and it's so interesting because it's completely opposite from what you taught. Most of you are like, who's going to do this and how are we going to do it? Versus what am I going to do and by when? And then you figure out the who and the how. It's such a cliche, but you take the step off the stairs knowing that there's going to be another stair below. You just trust. And then what's really interesting is that our community added 2 more C's, which I love, which is collaboration and consistency. And maybe we could add a 6th one, which is community, because what I find personally is that if you consistently do this, okay, you start to trust yourself more. If you collaborate with others, then again, we've already spoken about the power of going, together. And if you're part of a community, you've got far more chance of succeeding. So what's interesting is that if you use the second 3 C's of, collaboration, consistency, and community, it actually makes it much easier to make the commitment, to then have the certainty, and then to get the clarity. So use it, don't use it, highly recommend it. The 14th lesson, Clem Santa spoke about critical thinking. So he did about a 2-hour webinar, if I remember rightly, and I highly recommend listening to the entire thing. But my number one takeaway, and it was a question I asked him, I said, what is the number one thing that you recommend for people, whether they're 50 years old, 90 years old, or 10 years old in this current world? What's the number one skill you need? And he said, critical thinking. And I suppose this comes back to your polarization comment earlier, Lee, because critical thinking is that you analyze it from all sides. Your background, your bias and everything, even what your estate agent's telling you, your financial planner, your mate, your mother, it doesn't matter. Like critical thinking is that you look at it from all different sides. You take into account different scenarios. You say, right, if this happens, I had a great conversation today with the senior managing partner of the top accounting firm in the country that looks after the 400 largest property funds and property investors in the country. So literally one of the most respected people in the country. And we were having a fascinating conversation of, do you invest in America and where's the dollar going and which sectors do we invest in? And if interest rates are rising, what impact's that going to have on different sectors? And in England, what's the impact of Brexit and et cetera? And what about Europe and everything else? And it was fascinating because this is a classic example of critical thinking. What was I doing? Well, I'm just the dumbass in the room, like making as many notes as I possibly can. And, sometimes challenging to try and act slightly intelligent, but really just trying to gather as much information as I can. And for me, that's what I believe is part of the critical thinking process, is that you're learning from others, you're gathering that information. And I want to, recognize everyone that's on this webinar as an example, because this is a great example. Like you're gathering, I'd like to think I'm probably, of the people I know, I consume a hell of a lot more information than most people I know. So maybe I can make it easy for you that I consume all this information and then try and share it with you and give you my perspective. But please understand, it's still my perspective and it's my opinion and it doesn't make it right. So you still have to go out and have your own critical thinking. Like maybe Scott's a complete dunce and has no idea what he's talking about. That's fine. That's your opinion. Don't get polarized on it, but you're allowed your opinion. But my point being is that you've got to be critical and you've got to take everything from all sides of the fence. The next one, number 15, was this one by Peter Kunich. Now, I had the privilege of studying with this guy twice this year. I went to Jordan, and then I went to Switzerland. No, sorry, then I went to Kenya, and then I went to Switzerland. I'm going to talk about that in another lesson. But what I learned from this guy, Peter Kunich, is that he is 76. Actually, funny enough, Paul Dunn is exactly the same because he is 78, I think, Lee. How old is Paul? I think he was also 78. And I mean, these two gentlemen in their late 70s have more energy and purpose than most 40-year-olds I meet. I mean, it's phenomenal. It is utterly phenomenal. I mean, sorry, Lee, I'm going to put you on the spot here. But I mean, Peter Kunich was incredible. I mean, and I spent a whole week with the guy. So like walking, talking, looking at animals in the game reserve. But I mean, you were on a webinar with Paul Dunn. I mean, how much energy did that guy have?
He came out of the starting blocks absolutely blazing and didn't waver for 1 second. We also had another meeting with him post that to actually get signed up for B1G1 at a ridiculous hour for him. And he was like, no worries, let's just get it done. He has the most amazing energy. And I think he really feeds off the fact that he is in flow 100% of the time and living his purpose. So I think that definitely helps.
Completely. And I think, what I learned from this Peter Kunich is that he was 35. He was an investment banker. He did his MBA. He went to one of the top universities in Europe. And I'm talking now, he's in his 70s. So this is like 40 something years ago. And he was in a very high paying job in Europe. And he literally went at like the age of 35. This is not for me. He made a commitment to himself. He said, I'm going to do what I love from this day forth. And for 2 years, he literally had to borrow from his mates, like to kind of get going and become a coach and do what he loves. And 40 years later, his story is that he's never done a day's work that he didn't love doing. And it's so inspirational. And it ties together with the slide that I've got, which is a Japanese concept of ikija. And, it's what do you love? What does the world need? What can you be paid for? And what are you good at? And it sort of sits right in the middle, your passion, your mission, your vocation, your profession. And, again, my uncle, I learned this from my uncle. I remember being on holiday. I was in my 20s with my uncle, and he was reading the financial newspaper, like on holiday. And I was like, dude, like, what are you doing? You're on holiday. And he goes, Scott, I love doing this. Like, I go on holiday every single day and I get paid to do it. And that became very impressionable for me at a young age, because I was like, so what, you don't have to go to a crappy job. Like I was working in London, 8 till 6. I had to commute 1 hour there, 1 hour back. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I ended up doing an MBA on top of a full-time MBA on top of a full-time job, just because I was so bored and going out of my mind. And I remember, like, I was 25 when I resigned and started IPS. And these were impressionable things. So again, the lesson I learned this year, and even though I've seen it before, but with Peter Kunich and Paul Dunn, were just, for me, metaphors of people that have lived their life loving what they do and what it means and how much energy you've got in your 70s. Richard Branson was another one who had more energy when I spent time with him at 65 than most 45-year-olds do. And again, so maybe it's lessons that keep being repeated for me, but I love seeing people that are doing it in real life. And it's not only, I'm not doing it yet enough, I can promise you. 7 days a week, I'm not waking up going, woohoo, yay, I get to be in a management meeting today or whatever. Or a board meeting, even worse. So like it's definitely a lesson for me in doing more of what I love. And it's an invitation to everyone else in that space. The next one for me is a lesson again that comes up over and over again, but I did a wealth insight on it, and it's what can we learn from Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Jack Ma, and what do they have in common? And it's really interesting because if you look at any of them, Elon Musk with what he's built with Tesla and SpaceX, and even as far back as PayPal, etc., it's all been about. Let's just go through all three of them. Jeff Bezos, 95, seeing the internet was coming, seeing e-commerce, and basically built Amazon. And Jack Ma, who went to America, saw e-commerce, saw the internet, went, hang on, we got China. And by the way, we've got all these Chinese people small businesses trying to sell their stuff to the West, but the only way to do it was through a big trade fair, which was really expensive to go to. So most SMEs, small, medium enterprises, couldn't go. Tell you what, why don't I build an e-commerce site to help Chinese people talk to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world talk to China? Well, we got Alibaba. And really, for me, there's 4 things that you can learn from those 3 people. The first is that they looked at long-term trends. So a lot of what we've spoken about tonight, and a lot of what we spoke about in Wealth 5.0, is what are the long-term trends? You've got to know what they are. The second is to have a growth mindset. So what was interesting with Jeff Bezos is he was an investment banker in New York, and he went to his boss and he told him the idea of Amazon. And his boss said, that's an incredible idea for someone who doesn't have a job. Which I love. He could still be an investment banker in New York, working his 10 days a year, 10 days a year leave, and I don't know how much money he would earn, but I guarantee you wouldn't be Jeff Bezos from Amazon. And so it's a growth mindset. It's being able to learn and grow, and whatever you've learned, it's not enough. Like, he was an investment banker, and he was like, well, hang on, I'm going to move my whole family at a complete risk out to Silicon Valley, and I'm going to learn. Okay, which comes on the third one, which is being a leading learner. Now, I don't know what your take on that is, but this is my take, is that I set myself challenges regularly, and Lee really holds me to account on this, where it's like, I tell you what, we're going to do a webinar on Kathy Wood or Ray Dalio. And it's sounds like a great idea until someone actually has to present that webinar. And then I have to go and learn all about Kathy Wood. But for me, that's what I mean by a leading learner. But what's my take on what a leading learner is? Because by learning myself and then sharing, you're leading and you're learning, but everyone's winning. And that's kind of the process. So the invitation is that not only to have a growth mindset and learn, but who else can you teach? Because by teaching, you're learning yourself. And that really lastly comes to masterminds. And you've heard me, it was one of the things I spoke about last year. I bring it up so often, but a bird flying in a flock can fly 70% further than a bird flying on its own. And an individual, again, the research that I saw a year or so ago, if you try to do something on your own, you've got less than a 50% chance of succeeding. If you do it with a husband, a wife, a friend, you've got about a 60% chance of succeeding. If you're in a mastermind, a like-minded mastermind, you've got a higher than 70% chance of succeeding. And actually, I've read research that if you get a coach, it goes up, and I can't give you the stat, but I can guarantee it goes up even another level, probably 80, 85, even 90%. So back to, what can we learn from Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Jack Ma? Well, it's 4 things: long-term trend, growth mindset, leading learner, and masterminds, in terms of growing. Lesson number 17, traveling. So this is an interesting one when you take on COVID. And again, there's probably 2 lessons actually here. So the first one was that when I wanted to go on this course, it was a course, and it was going to have 4 modules around the world. And South Africa was in lockdown. No one was traveling anywhere. My travel agent said, you're absolutely crazy. You can't travel. It's impossible. Everyone told me it's impossible. And I tell you, that's a very good way, if someone tells you it's impossible, for me to get me to do something. And so we found a way, okay, and we traveled. And again, 2 lessons. The first one is that there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Just do it. But what really opened my eyes again to traveling was how much it invigorated my spirit. It taught me new things. I met new people. I experienced new places. And I know that most people are in lockdown mentality and I can't travel and blah, blah, blah. But my invitation is find a way. Find a way to travel. Find a way to make it part of your life. I know that I missed it big time since 2019. And I was amazed how it invigorated me again, getting back to masterminds, physically meeting people, not sitting on Zoom meetings on what night are we? Tuesday night, just before Christmas, getting into like-minded rooms with like-minded people, seeing new countries. I'd never been to Jordan. I wouldn't go back there, but I've seen it. I've been to the Dead Sea. I've seen all the amazing things in Jordan. So anyway, traveling for me was a big lesson this year. And it wasn't all good. I did break my wrist in Switzerland snowboarding while I was waiting to get into England and was on their quarantine list, etc. So you get the good and the bad. 18 is an interesting one for me. And why it is because it's a lesson I have to keep reminding myself and reminding our team members, is that repetition is the mother of skill. And, again, another saying is common sense is not so common. Like, you have to literally repeat something to yourself and to others over and over and over and over again. Okay. And why I say this is that there was this course, and I'm going to share with you quickly here. So I highly recommend signing up to Mind Valley. I think it's well worth the money. And Mind Valley. And I signed up for the all access, which cost me about $700. It seems to have changed because this year it cost me $200. So I'm just going to log in here quickly for you. And it was interesting because I did this course called Extraordinary. And I know, Lee, you did this as well. And while I'm looking for this, Lee, maybe you could just give your thoughts on this extraordinary course, because I know you did it as well.
So it was a module every day. It was an activity every day. It was holding each other account. We actually formed a group and we did it together. But what you learn about yourself and how you look into yourself and how it pushes you to go through different things about consciously engineering the life that you want, about how you can, I think one of my favorite ones was how you can manifest happiness. Part of the challenge was, and I don't get it right, is to meditate. My mind is too busy and it didn't matter what I did. I could not get meditating right without bursting out laughing. So it is my challenge. But really, there were so many things in there that made you look into yourself and grow, that by the end of it, you were a completely, I don't want to say a different person, but your outlook on life and what you were actually looking for every day consciously to fulfill your life was different. You consciously look for the things that make you happy instead of waking up and going, oh bugger, I've got to spend 3 hours with my leadership team or 4 hours in a board meeting. You actually, the way you process that is different. So for me, it'd be extraordinary. If you don't do anything else in there, just do Be Extraordinary. And you can sign up, just so that you know, for Mind Valley, you don't have to have an all access pass. You can sign up for individual courses.
Yeah. So for me, there's a bunch of lessons that I wanted to share here. And I'm glad Lee shared that. You know, it was interesting because I did this course a year ago in June last year. In fact, it was a great catalyst for me when I was quite down because of COVID. I was overweight. And I ended up losing 20 kilos, getting fit and just getting my whole mojo sorted, And again, repetition is the mother of skill, which is what I brought up here, because I did this a year later. And I didn't do it because I want to do it again. I did it, hey, because I'm such a team guy. I want to help Lee and Alex and the rest of the team. I'm going to do it with them so that at least when they talk about something, I can be up to speed and whatever. Well, again, I got so much out by giving. And what I realized was that this is not a course that you can do once off. Like, you should be doing this at least once a year. So again, a lesson that I keep having to be taught myself, but books like Think and Grow Rich, some of Tony Robbins' stuff, like this extraordinary course, like I find huge value. If you find something that's truly valuable for you, do it again, and do it again and do it again. I mean, Think and Grow Rich, I've listened to, like, I think I've read it 6 times. I've listened to it 4 times. I even did it while running Comrades. But this I really, really recommend. And just in Mind Valley generally, there's so many good courses on here. If you look at just my programs at the moment, you've got the Super Brain, you've got 0 to 100 million, you've got Tantra, you've got this Be Extraordinary, Longevity, Awaken. I mean, there's just so much good stuff. And they've got these daily modules, but I'm not here to sell Mind Valley. I'm just here to share, again, 2 things. One is be a leading learner, which we've already discussed. But then secondly, repetition. Like, when you find something good, don't always be looking for something new. When you find something good, redo it. Like, I have to keep reminding myself that, by the way. I'm also an idiot and forget this stuff every now and again. The next one is a piece of research that I heard literally yesterday, and I'm just finding it for you. So this is quite scary. Lee, do you know what percentage of the world's wealth is currently owned by the top 1%?
I would have to say about, it's there. I was actually going to go about 80%.
So no, at the moment it's actually 54%. So as we stand, the last research I saw was 54%. But by the end of 2030, it's expected to be 2/3 of all the wealth, so 66.6%, will be owned by the top 1%. And so again, the big lesson here is that the inequality is just getting worse and worse around the world. And for me, what's interesting is that, this is something I'm passionate about, you're passionate about, Lee, our whole organization is passionate about it in terms of our purpose. But I suppose what I've realized this year is that it's not only inequality. I was blown away by what Clem Santa said on climate. And to date, I'll be honest, I haven't been such a climate guy. But my logic was you can't solve all the big problems, but like the climate thing really kind of shocked me. And then my girlfriend recommended that we watch this documentary on Netflix. And I can't quite remember it now, but it was all about the ocean as well and all about climate. And it was like, wow, So when you look at these problems, I think what I'm trying to get at is that any one of these problems is escalating and getting worse. Okay, so again, we've spoken quite a lot about stuff today. Do what you love. Find your key job, what about purpose, etc. But like the world has massive challenges at the moment. And again, for me, these challenges are getting worse. And again, this was one of my learning lessons. I mean, I thought it was getting worse. I never realized it was within 10 years, it's becoming like monumentally worse. And so is the environment, by the way. And there's a whole bunch of other major problems. So find something you love and go out there and solve it. Which leads us to the 20th lesson, which is that the old way is not working anymore. The old way of investing, the old way of doing things, the old way of leadership, the old way of, trying to build a company, anything. It's like the old way doesn't work anymore. It's not even as good anymore to say the 20th century mindset, because it's like the mindset of the last 2 decades is not good enough, to be able to do it. And just today, talking to, again, that senior managing partner, he was like, what do pensioners invest in? Like they can't invest in bonds, there's no return. They can't leave their money in the bank. In Europe, there's negative, like literally negative returns. Retirement policies aren't working, pension schemes aren't working. What do? Well, what do? They trade the stock market. They try to play the stock market because that's the only thing that's giving the returns, which is like betting against winter because the stock market's going to correct at some point. And so again, the old ways are not working. Now, one of the guys that we've interviewed this year, Mark in Australia from the International Academy of Wealth, he 95% of his wealth, 95% of his life is on crypto. Now, I have to say, that's not me, okay, yet. Okay, like I'm like, wow, like how do you do that? Okay, so I'm still very much in the old way, and this guy's older than me, but he's like adopting this new way. And so, Lee owns a crypto punk puppy or whatever the ninja thing is, but like I don't, okay, like, and clearly I've got to go out there and buy myself a crypto bloody NFT. I do own crypto, but I don't own an NFT. But I think what I'm trying to say is that, what worked for you last year and the last decade is not going to work next year and the next decade. And, what's interesting in our space is that, there's so much research out there around the size of the real estate market and how big it is. And, it's phenomenal, like the size of real estate in comparison with any other market. But what's more interesting to me, and I think this is, this was the article I was trying to find earlier about India and the rise of India and what's happening. But this is the book that I was going to say. Sorry, that was the trend on India. But this is the book I wanted to talk about with trends and in real estate and in technology. Now, this is just, it doesn't matter which sector you want to look at. We're passionate about the technology and real estate sector. Is that 25% of all capital was raised for American property, for American real estate. 25% of all capital was raised online in the last 12 months. Now, the other thing that's fascinating to me is that they predicted that by 2025, they would be at like $16 billion through online, digital platforms to invest in real estate. And in the last 12 months, they did 17 billion. So it's way ahead of trend. And again, if you remember the 6 Ds of disruption: digitization, deception, disruption. And up until now, we've been in the deception phase, but that disruption phase is coming. And again, you've got this rise of digital all over the world. And again, I repeat, the old ways of working don't work. So, all of us, the encouragement and for any of us is like, what are these new ways? How are they going to work? How can we change our own lifestyles? Because, we can either be part of the future or we can kind of hold on to the past, but it ain't going to work. Like, it's not working. And we all know that. So yeah, I recommend this book, by the way. If you want the research, there's go and look it up. There's a whole bunch of research out there in terms of what's happening in the market. But it leads us to the last thing, which is impact investing. And I've brought this one up before, but again, it's like this growing trend that everyone's talking about. And the CEO of BlackRock in 2019 came out and said that purpose was a major thing and all the companies had to be part of purpose. And we started tonight with impact investing, and we spoke about impacts and the impact of having impacts, individual impacts. But when you look at this, the next 10 years of impact investing, and it's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, so we've spoken tonight about democratization, etc. Now, we did an entire webinar on this, so I'm not going to go into this in detail, but the climate and then the tools, and that's why it's Edtech, Fintech, Medtech, Green Tech, and Space Tech, which are the tools to enable this whole thing to happen. But if you look at it, it's really fascinating. I mean, ARC is, as I said to you already, Kathy Wood is one of the most recognized people. Literally a month or two ago, she brought out her impact fund. If you look here, there's so many different places that you can go and look now around this whole impact space. And what's beautiful about it is that I believe now you can invest and make a profit and have a purpose at the same time. I believe it's been like that for a while, but now it's in the full awareness of everyone in terms of what's interesting. And I love this article. How can one person make a lasting impact on the world? And tonight alone, Lee, I look forward to you sharing with it. But how much impact have we had just tonight? In terms of by people showing up, by people sharing, the impact. And we're going to really drive this forward next year with B1G1. If you refer a friend or anything, we're gonna make it where literally there's tangible benefit, and it's not only about making money, but about the impact that you're having on the planet. So, I also find this article here quite interesting. This one here, where Elon Musk. So one of the UN guys put out a quote on world hunger, and he said, well, Elon Musk's worth 100 billion. It's ridiculous, and he should be donating his money to solve world hunger. And Elon Musk turned it straight back at him and said, give me a full plan and I will sell my Tesla shares and I will fund it. And interesting enough, the UN responded to Elon Musk. So watch this space, because I like what Elon Musk did. He's saying, okay, cool. You just make an out there comment, give me a proper bulletproof plan and I'll give you the cash, which properly puts people on their toes, because this is not just a charity where the money can be wasted. And why I wanted to finish on this, Lee, and why it's lesson 21 for me, is that I think what we're learning is that it's no longer about charities. It's no longer about governments giving. It's no longer about governments helping you and me or solving world problems. It's about business doing it. And I think, with Elon Musk, it's a classic example in terms of, where he's going, okay, cool, I'll give you the funding, but you give me a proper bulletproof plan. And I mean, the man's built Tesla, he's built SpaceX, he's built Solar City, he's built PayPal. Like, I think he's got the ability to execute. And so he's going, I'll do this, I'll fund this if you can execute, but I'm not giving it to a charity, or even corrupt organization, and I'm not saying the UN's corrupt, but generally in charity organizations, you put $1 in and like something ridiculous like 10 cents actually gets to the person trying to be helped, and this is all about tangible, realistic solutions. And it kind of leads me to our impact, which is our wealth movement. And, something that we've had since 2015, and Hilda Lunderstedt actually built this manifesto for us, but, it's hashtag wealth movement, creating a sustainable and better place for all. Our manifesto: imagine a world where most or all people are literate, a world where education is par for the course, a world where women are treated as equals, a world where all people have access to investment opportunities. In this world, children grow up in a family and raised in a home their parents own. Because of this, they will be healthier and have access to healthcare facilities and caregivers. They live in a less stressful environment with less conflict in their homes. Imagine a world where 6 billion people on the planet who currently live in poverty can live a better life. Imagine if we can only help 1 billion in the next 5 years. Imagine that world. And our invitation is not only to imagine, but be part of a movement that can ultimately make that change. And I suppose for me, the lesson I keep learning is that we can do it. Each and every one of us can be part of the change that we seek. So before I move to my concluding thoughts, Lee, those were my 21 lessons. I do have 7 books that I recommend. And I didn't do this last year, but I did look through my book list. And the first one, and I'm just going to Google them and literally bring it up live, is the first one is this book, which was recommended, funny enough, by Paul Dunn to Lee and I, and it's called Cult Status, and it's this book here. I'm literally listening to it at the moment, and it's how to build a new company. And I'm loving it. I'm only on chapter 1, which is all about impacts at the moment. So, but it's a really good book that I would recommend. The next one was recommended to me. Courage is Calling. So really enjoyed this book, just finished it. And again, in this world we live in at the moment, we're all under pressure, we're all under anxiety, we're all under uncertainty of COVID and the economy and everything. And this is some great stories through history around courage and how to build, and maintain courage in yourself. Another great book, The Everyday Hero. So this is another great book by Robin Sharma. Very easy book to read. It's got about 100 lessons, and each lesson's only like 5 minutes long. So this book, The Everyday Hero, I really enjoyed it. My favorite book for the year is this one here. And if you've got a business or you enjoy leadership, this was my best book of the year. And it's this one here by Netflix. So it was basically how Netflix was built, by Reed Hastings, and all around culture. And I know, Lee, you and I have spoken a lot about this, which I've absolutely loved and highly recommend. My #1 book for this year. Leading Without Authority was another book I read this year, and really enjoyed this in terms of leadership. I loved this book on resilience, and this was the true story of Nike. Now I know it's quite an old book. I think it came out in 2012, but I only found out about it now. I tell you what, everyone thinks of Nike and this billion-dollar company now, but no one knows how many times Nike nearly died and how resourceful they were, and basically just persistence. And then the last one that I enjoy, and you can probably see my reading style this year, is is finding my own resilience. But it was this one here, The Obstacle is the Way. And again, it's all about perseverance and learning from real life lessons. And so, Lee, that is all my lessons. What I wanted to share just before, if we've got any Q&A, is just to remind people that a lot of what we've spoken about tonight, these top trends were in webinars, where the webinar was an hour and a half or 2 hours, literally on each one of them, including the one with Clem Santa. Our ecosystem, we've got Wealth Migrate, the platform to invest. We've got the university where you can go and learn online. We've got the Wealth Movement, which is a like-minded gathering of individuals, which Lee and I have every intention next year of doing live events again, COVID independent. And one day we'll get it down to $1 per investor. I do want to just give you a little gift. We've got the investor test, which Shane and the team very kindly built. So the investor test was something I built with Roger Hamilton back in 2018. It was literally you got a PDF and etc. Now we've got an entire digital solution. There's over 100 videos to teach you. You can't pass or fail the test. And I believe it's one of the fastest ways to help yourself. There's 5 pillars to wealth. I don't have time tonight to go into all the detail, but you can literally go to investortest.digital. It normally sells for $7. And again, we could give it away for free, but we've learned that people that don't pay attention. But something that we did for Black Friday was drop it down to $1 and literally remove virtually any barrier for anyone. Again, we still charge $1 rather than giving it away for free, because people who pay attention. And it's not about giving it for free. It's about getting an impact. It's about having an impact in your life or someone else's life. So whether it's for you or for a Christmas present, I'd highly recommend it. And you will find that there's other stuff that you can do where you can get access to our Wealth Hackers opportunity. Lee and myself and Alex and Shane, we've got our inner circle, but we're wanting to evolve this now into Wealth Hackers. What's hacking about? Well, you hack your way. It's a fast way to get results. In a mastermind, you can hack your way to wealth, and I love it. It's in terms of where we're going. So if you want to be part of it, and I don't know, Lee, you did mention it. Some of the questions of people, again, have good webinars or people we want to interview next year. We want to take our community to the next level, and these are ways to join them. If you do want to invest in the company, you like what we're doing, and you think that we're part of a global change, global movement that you want to be part of, like I told you, we're going on Cedars next year, so watch the space. I think we go live in the private launch on the 17th of January and the public launch on the 24th of January. Don't hold us exactly to those dates, but that's what we're aiming for at the moment. And as a company, we've got a pretty solid track record now with members in 170 countries. We've facilitated over $1 billion worth of transactions. But what I believe is more important is our mission is to make alternative assets available and accessible to anyone, anywhere, from any amount. And that's why, for me, Seeders gets so exciting, because traditionally our shareholders were only able to invest from $10,000. Now with Seeders, people can participate literally from £10, in terms of that process. And, something else we're going to get going next year is we built this back in 2015, which is our collaborative wealth honeycomb. And if you do or don't know, the honeycomb is the most resilient structure in nature. Alex, who's one of our partners that Lee and I work with, is going to get this going again. One of the good examples is NFT and real estate, and create like little micro masterminds for people that have interests. But at the end of the day, all of those masterminds, back in 2015, we did this with digital currency, and it's become a real thing now. Like, it's no longer just a fad. And so, there's different parts of our ecosystem, and people can choose where they want to be part of. So, if you want to be part of this ecosystem, we highly, I recommend it, but more importantly, we invite you to be part of it, and, either yourself or let others be part of it as a Christmas present. Ultimately, it's a gift that keeps on giving. But in conclusion, what are we doing and why are we doing this? It's ultimately to put smart investing in everyone's pocket. And you've got a smartphone, you've got a smartwatch. What is it about? It's not just about investing. It's about making smart, intelligent decisions for you and your family. And so, Lee, that's all from me. These are some of the steps if people want to go out and look at Wealth 5.0 or go to the platform Wealth Migrate and invest. Ultimately, it's about starting a journey to global investing and becoming a global citizen. But hopefully tonight or today or in the recording, I've shared, and I know it's a lot of information, I apologize, but these are probably the top 21 things for me that have stood out most in my learning journey this year.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you to our attendees. I know that it, as Scott said, was a lot of information. I think the point there is that you don't have to apologize for that. Everyone turns up year on year. This webinar grows. I keep laughing at Scott and saying, when we're in like 2040, what the heck is he going to do? Because he's going to have to book out a whole afternoon. But it really is a pleasure to be sharing with you guys. Thank you, Scott, for the time, effort, and energy that you have brought to this webinar and our webinars throughout the year. It has been a fantastic way to end off our webinars for 2021. And we do look forward to connecting with you in 2022. But once again, the invitation is there. If you would like to speak to anyone on our team about anything to do with the Global Wealth Group, please reach out to me. I will connect you to the correct person if you don't have a direct line of communication with them yet. And please do, yes, there are my details.
We lost you, Lee. Seem to have just lost Lee. Can people hear me, or have we lost me or Lee? Hello. Okay. Thanks. Thanks. So you can still hear me. Okay. Well, I don't know where Lee is. She's in Costa Rica, but I suppose from our side, the one thing I do want is for Lee to give us our impacts just at that moment. So I'm hoping that if you want to hang on, let's get Lee back if she can. She's probably her Wi-Fi has gone down or something. Because what I'm really interested in is how many impacts we've had from this webinar. And to remind everyone, if you want to, I really appreciate all the positive comments. It's E for education, it's T for planting trees, and it's W for clean water. And anyone that engages or makes a comment or anything, we will then donate money towards one of those causes, be it education, be it trees, or be it water. And one of the reasons that Paul Dunn recommended that we do 3 different ones is that no one likes, if you give them one option, they don't like it. If you give them 2 options, it's a choice. If you give them 3, they feel like we've got a nice balance. And if you give them 4, it's too confusing. So that's the reason we were recommended to do 3. I'm going to stay online. Does anyone have any questions? If you want to ask any questions, I can see there's lots of suggestions coming through that Lee has prompted. If she doesn't come back, and I'm sorry, I can't do this because she was doing it while I was talking. But if she doesn't come back, we'll post it on the Inner Circle groups, the impacts that we've had. But does anyone have any questions that you want me to look at? And Lee's made a comment here that Barbados will have its first embassy in the Metaverse, which is really interesting. I'm just trying to look through the things here. There are recordings for people that have asked. Thanks, Christopher, for the honesty. Yeah, look, as you can see, tonight is, it's live, it's unscripted, and the point is it's to try and share. Bob Proctor as well is another good example, Jay. I appreciate it. I think Lee's joining us. I can hear a big ping. You've got the investor test on digital. Thank you for all the comments. I'm just seeing here if there's any questions. Lee, I was just seeing if there were any questions or anything. Someone says, is this recorded? It is definitely, and we can share it with others. And please share it with people that you think it might add value to. We want to empower 1 billion people. I know it's an audacious goal, but we do it one person at a time. So, Lee, from your perspective, I think we can round it off, but I would like to just ask, do you have any idea of how we're going to do the impacts?
So, Scott, we will go and insert the impacts now, and we will send a message with the recording link to absolutely everyone so they can see how much impacts we have made on the different various ones. I have to go and tally up those that specifically went with either water, education, or trees, and also our general impact. But those will go out and we'll share them on all of our groups as well.
Cool. Okay. Well, from that perspective, Lee, I've checked here. There's no more questions. I think everyone has had enough drinking from the fire hose, the Scott 2021 fire hose. And so, I'll let you end off, but just from my side, just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I'm certainly in my flow when I do this and when I share. So as much as I get to share, I also get to learn, which I really appreciate. And even reviewing the 21 things makes me focus on what my learning lessons were, which again, kind of catalytically reminds you of the important lessons. So remembering, again, I'm going to say this over and over again, by helping others, you help yourself. And maybe that's a good way to end the year, have a fantastic festive season, and hopefully you can impact not only someone's life tonight, but many people's lives over the next coming days and weeks.
Thanks very much, Scott. To our members that have stayed with us until the end of this, thank you for ending our webinar series for 2021 on such a high. For those of you who are traveling over the festive season, please be safe. For those of you who are just staying home and spending time with loved ones, please enjoy it and have many memory-making moments. So from us at the Global Wealth Group, thank you for joining us on this journey. We look forward to starting a new journey and sharing with you in 2022. So wherever you are, be blessed, be safe, and goodbye.
Cheers, everyone.